Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to this week's Monday Motivation. Can you believe it's episode 74, which shows we've been going well and truly for over a year and a bit now here on the Queen of Being Seen Facebook page. So just in case you've stumbled across this, somebody shared it on their timeline and you're thinking, what on earth is this Monday Motivation about? Monday Motivation started because Monday mornings got a really, really bad rap. Monday mornings were all about struggling to kickstart your day, your Monday, even your week, and for some people, your month. Hey, morning, Alan. So Monday Motivations actually started way back when I was a training manager in financial services and quite a senior training manager. So not only responsible for training teams of salespeople, not only responsible training leadership teams and senior managers, but also responsible for buying in the training. And one of the things that I noticed, regardless of where the training or motivation came from, was that sometimes Mondays were met with a bit of a stop and a bit of a downer. And I'm all about changing your can'ts into your cans. Now, if I'm going to try and help you to do that and make that transition, I really want to know where your sticking point is and where you're struggling. So if you are watching for the umpteenth time or the first time this morning, do type in the box and do say hello, type your questions, make your comments. I love to hear from you and I love to connect with you in this way. So already we've got Ivona who's saying good morning, Alan who's saying good morning, and I can see a few more of you watching that haven't been brave enough to say hello. So Ivona's saying, hope that I'm feeling better. I am feeling better, but my throat is still sore. So if I sound a little funny, I probably sound like it's the middle of the night and I haven't woken up and I'm sleep talking. That's probably why. I have a spot of tonsillitis. So before I get started, I'm going to take a sip of water. So this week's episode is all about making time. You could call it creating time or making time. So why am I even talking about this subject? Well, I lead, like you, a very, very busy life. And one of the things that I've heard in the last few weeks in response to, hey, how are you? 9 times out of 10, people will respond with this phrase or something similar. Really good, really busy at the moment. And I always look at what's the question behind the question? What's the sentiment behind what's actually being said? And one of the things or a couple of the observations that I make is that being busy is somehow a trophy to be held up. But on the flip side of it, being busy for some people is actually kind of ruining their day because they feel like they've got so much to do. They're busy spinning plates. They don't know what to do next. So I thought that I would spend this Monday Motivation tackling this phenomena head on. So while I cough at you, forgive me, there may be a few coughs, there may be a few intakes of breath, but I will carry on drinking my water. So here's one of the things that all of that leads to, all of that busyness leads to, all of that overwhelm leads to. So many people that I've spoken to in the last few weeks have said 3 very specific things. They've either felt overwhelmed, they've had a lot to do, they don't know where to start, they don't know how to get it started. So there's overwhelm. They've either said, I'm overwhelmed, oh my gosh, my focus, I don't know, I don't know how you can focus. If you could teach me how to focus, I'd love to focus. And then a lot of people are just simply met with, I'm so busy, I don't know what to do next. So I'll be honest with you, we have got like the next 15 minutes or so to talk about ways in which we can, that we can help with that busyness, help with that overwhelm, help with the focus, help us to create time. So I'm going to start by sharing something with you that I think could be helpful. But if you've got a specific question on something that you're trying to navigate at the moment, a place you're trying to create time or make time, please do ask it on this live, because I'd love to be able to start to speak to that if I can. And I want to share a story from my own personal, my own personal life journey, if you like, because with all the will in the world, I have studied, I've done a lot of personal development myself, I share a lot of personal development tools, but 15 minutes is not going to be the thing that's going to completely change your life, but I'm hoping that a couple of nuggets will. So if you're listening to this and think, I could really use some help in this area, this is part of what I offer in terms of my business as usual. So if you really want some help, I've recently taken on a couple of clients, and ironically this is obviously a hot topic, the busyness, who have both said that they really need to get stuff done and they want to hold themselves accountable. Yes, they get that, but they also would like my help in them being held accountable too. And the first thing that I will tackle is how they're spending their time. So if that's something that you really need in your life, it is one of the services that I offer. So it's not a free of charge type of thing, but if it's something that you would like to discuss, I offer it in 6-week chunks, so in bite-sized chunks, because there's no point you going into a big, year-long program and then worrying about how you're going to spend your time in that. But if this is something that you or somebody would really like to jump in and get involved in, hit the message button above, and I'll just say, just put bite-sized in the message, and I can speak to you about what that would include. Okay, so without any further ado, let's talk about overwhelm, let's talk about focus, but let's talk about me and why I'm talking about this subject. If you had switched the clock back to about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, and you had asked me to sit in a room for 10 minutes and not do anything at all, I would have hyperventilated. I would have found it virtually impossible. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason was that I had a very, very busy career and I felt like I couldn't stop. I had to use every single moment that I could to cram everything in. And sometimes that could be to my detriment. I do remember there were times where I would go to bed at sort of 1 o'clock in the morning and then would get up again by sort of 5:30 in the morning, having only 4 or 5 hours sleep. Now, I am very lucky or unlucky, however you look at it, that I can keep generating this energy and I very rarely burn out. But just because I can doesn't mean that I should. And there's the magic word, should. Should implies that there is that we believe, when we use the word should, we believe that somewhere in our surroundings we should be doing something. We're that society says that we should do something that we perhaps don't entirely agree with. So in terms of moving forward and creating the time that we want and making the time that we want, it's important to do a little bit of a self-observation exercise, because if any given part of our life or day is set up that we can't even take 10 minutes to ourselves to sit there and completely switch off, then that is a sign that things will need to change. Things under the surface need a little bit of a change. And the reason that they'll need to change is because you'll end up being a human that's doing stuff, not a human that's being and enjoying life. One of my friends recently said that one of the words for her forthcoming year is going to be about savouring. And by the way, if there are people that you normally see on this live that aren't here this morning, let them know that I've gone live and hopefully that I'm streaming and you can see me, hear me, and feel my vibe. So we go through life and sometimes we forget to savour life, whether we're busy, whether we're in overwhelm or something else. So here are a few tips to help us navigate life so that we're still doing the things that we love, doing the work that we love, and enjoying and taking in the moments to savour without the overwhelm, and hopefully with some focus. So the first thing is, and this goes back to the late 80s. I remember working for a really big brand, and they announced to us that there was going to be a time and motion study. And I remember as quite a young teenager thinking, time and motion, what on earth is all of that about? Well, time and motion studies, and I don't know if they're still being used today, I presume they are, were very popular for big companies to bring in to work out how time was being used. Now, obviously, the people that were working in that environment would get a little bit kind of itchy and a little bit tetchy, because they would be thinking to themselves, do my bosses think that I'm wasting time, or I'm not spending my time wisely? And you would get a bit uncomfortable. But they would come in and all they would do is sit and observe. So the first tip I've got for you, if you are really feeling the busyness, if you're feeling the overwhelm, if you find yourself saying a lot of time, I don't have time, the first thing you need to do, which feels counterintuitive, is to press a pause and have a look at time and motion study. Now, you may or may not know this about me, but when I left school, I went to catering college. And I remember just prior to going to catering college, I used to clearly take a big interest in cookery at school. And one of the things we had to do was a time plan of what we were going to do. And I always found it a bit weird having to sit there with a blank sheet of paper and write down what we were going to do before we'd done it. So if you're particularly stuck in this area, one of the quick ways just to really navigate this piece, rather than sitting and planning out your day when you're really not sure about how long tasks actually take you and you're busy as it is, just use this week to observe, like do your work. And as you're doing your work, have a blank piece of paper, maybe a post-it note or something like that, and just observe what time you start doing something. And just go about your day as usual, but just record when something starts and when it perhaps stops. Okay, so your only job is to go about your day as normal. So I, for example, especially for this morning, would write alarm 5:45, snoozed. Yes, I did that. Snoozed. Alarm 5:54, snoozed. I don't need to do that at the time, obviously, because I wouldn't be snoozing. But then I would, on my piece of paper, I would put the time that I got up, which was 6:20. And I have to admit, I struggled, probably because I'm not feeling well, which is my excuse as to why I snooze. I wanted to get some extra sleep. So I would put that between 5:45 and 6:20 that I was snoozing, okay? And then I would put between 6:20 to 7 o'clock that I was on social media. Yes, at this time I was on social media. And then, I don't need to put the level of detail because I know what I was doing on social media, setting things up and etc, etc. Then I would put from 7, or I think it might have been 1 minute past 7, until the time that this finishes, that I was doing a Facebook Live, my Monday motivation. Then I will continue to do the things that I need to do. So I have an appointment at 8 o'clock. I have another appointment at 10 o'clock. And I'm so grateful to the person that I've got the appointment with. It's a 90-minute appointment. And they have a choice of doing this either face-to-face or virtually, where we can do it over the telephone or through some sort of video call. And they came back to me and said, you know what? I don't mind how we do it. Now, because I'm not feeling 100% and I don't really want to be spreading my germs, and I'm doing my own time and motion study and having a look at where I'm best using time or wasting time or losing time, rather than me get ready, leave the house, walk to the train station, go and take a 20-minute train and then take another probably 10-minute train, but all the waiting in between and the walking in between, and then going to meet the client, have our 90-minute meeting, and then do the same thing in reverse. The time and motion element of this has allowed me to have a look at not the 90 minutes I get to spend with the client, but the travel there and the travel back, which could be dead time or not. I might use that, and this is how you start making time. Because I'll be travelling, it might be difficult for me to do certain tasks, maybe internet-based tasks or admin-based tasks. Excuse me, but it might mean that what I could do instead is listen to an audio book, or listen to a catch up on a Facebook Live, or you know, something else like that, or even write notes. And I tend to write a lot of notes in my phone that can be saved to my computer so that I can keep going and start doing something later on. So one of my time making tips or time creating tips, and I do have an iPhone, is that I link my notes to my email account, which means that any notes that I type on my phone automatically get saved to my computer. Now, why do I do that? It means that I don't have to, and this was another thing that I did in my own time and motion study, that I'm not then creating notes on pen and paper, needing to find some extra time or create some extra time to type them up, and then having to create another time to put them in a document. So it means that once I put them on my phone, then I can do it one cut and paste, one action, put them into where I need to put them into, and either send them off to an assistant to get them all prettied up, or put them in a presentation or something else. It could be a social media post. It could be something like a blog post that I'm writing or something similar. It could be to formulate my ideas for the next series of videos or something that helps a client. So having a look at that. Ivona says, great exercise for today, thanks. Remember doing this at work. Absolutely. So the key here is, especially if you are currently short on time and wanting to get to the bottom of it, don't do anything differently. Go about your day. And I recommend that you do this for a week, which sounds like a long time, but in order to get your life back, go about your day as usual. Have a pen and paper with you, okay, or even type it on your phone. Have a pen and paper with you or type it on your phone, and just put what time you started the task, what the task was, and what time you finished it. Don't go into detail. Don't create more work for yourself. Okay, so one thing that I want to quickly end this with, and this is to talk about focus and where we put our focus. So, and it's so interesting because yesterday I did a little interview in the group, the Visibility Vibes tribe. I'd say it was less of an interview, more of a kind of like interactive riff, if you like. And one of the subjects that came up was about focus. And this is a thing that I hear so many people say. They very quickly say that they're short on time. Now, gosh, I'm trying to think when it was. It would have been over 10 years ago. I remember wanting to get to the bottom of this busyitis that I had. And on the busyitis, one of the things that I noticed when I asked people that seemed really great with time, I said, like, how do you get the time to do this thing, this thing? How do you get the time to do so much stuff? How do you get the time so that you arrive like extra early? And they all said pretty much the same thing. You don't get the time, you create time. You create that time. I was like, yeah, I get that. But how do you create the time? What do you do? What do you do? They say, you make it happen, you create the time. You know, and I went deeper into asking, I think it was 5 people in the end that I asked the same questions to, and a lot of common threads came up, which I don't have the time to go into all of that now. It'd be like a 4-hour something or other. But here's the thing that I want you to pay attention to. When you know where you're using your time, or perhaps where you're losing your time from doing your own time and motion study, then have a look at how you are spending time that you could substitute for something else. So many people use TV as a way of switching off. What's the point in watching 4 hours or 5 hours a night of TV when you could maybe use one of those hours as a focused hour to get stuff done? Like, how much time do you watch TV? How many times do you watch TV and say, gosh, there's nothing good on TV at the moment, but you've just sat there and maybe watched it for 4 or 5 hours? How many times do you say yes to somebody else and no to yourself, therefore supporting somebody else and not being kind to yourself and not allowing yourself the time that you need to do something? How many times do you do something out of obligation? So if this is you, and although I could say this was me like 10, 15 years ago, there are elements of my life where I need to watch that it doesn't creep back in. Ask yourself this question. Thinking about the goal or the end game or the plan that you want to move towards. Maybe you just have a project that you need to finish off. Ask yourself this question and insert the name of the project or the thing that you're doing. in order to name of project thing that I'm doing, who do I have to be to get this done? If you find that a difficult question to ask, think of someone you know who would totally not have any problems getting that thing done, and ask yourself, what would they do? And borrow their tactics, like what would they do to get this done? I hope this has been helpful to you. I'd love to hear about like where you're looking at making time for yourself, how you're using making time to motivate yourself. And if you don't want to post it on the comments below here on this page, you might be watching this through another place like YouTube. I'd invite you to come over, join the Visibility Vibes Tribe, which is a private group on Facebook, which means people can see that you're in the group, but they can't see what you're writing in the group. And in the Visibility Vibes Tribe, you'll be amongst hundreds of other visibility vibers who've all got the same end goal in mind, and that's your support, their support, and to be more visible in the world. So if there's something you've got to do, maybe you need to do a piece of work, a project, a presentation, maybe you need to put a proposal together, maybe you need to go and attend a meeting in front of the board today, maybe you are the board and you need to work out how you can create that meeting without hundreds of people bombarding it or hijacking ideas. Whatever it is you need to do this week, do your own time and motion study, have a look for the places where you can create and make more time, have a look at how your time is actually being spent, and take it from there. So one more tip before I leave is, if you are self-employed, one of the things that I did about 18 months ago was I realised in talking to a friend who also had a business that sometimes I would use big pockets of time having conversations with people which felt great and good, but weren't really conducive to me getting stuff done in my day. Hi, morning, Misha. They weren't conducive to me getting stuff done in my day. So here's what I would advocate for that. If you're self-employed, if you're a consultant, if you are in charge of your own time, once you've finished that phone call with a friend, or once you've gone out for coffee and you've gone into town and met up with a person and realised that 4 or 5 hours have gone, invoice yourself for the amount of time that you've just spent. And if you can't see it in minutes, you'll soon start to notice it in terms of the financial resources that you're taking in your business. So what I mean by that is, if you decide, oh, my friend's on WhatsApp, oh, I'll have a quick chit chat with them, and you realise that chit chat turns into 90 minutes, invoice yourself at your hourly rate so that you can see how much time and how much of your money you're spending on doing your Busyitis. I hope that's been helpful. Come over to the Visibility Vibes Tribe group. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, what you're going to do differently, and I'd love to hear under here which of these tips that I've shared this morning, just one, don't try and do all of them, but which of these tips are you going to implement so that you can get stuff done, so that you can focus, and so that you can stay out of overwhelm. Alan already says he needs to prepare a speech for tomorrow night. How do I decide how much time is required? That's a very, very great question, and that's definitely for another live. So, Alan, I would just say create a pocket of time, and look at the time that you have and stick to it. So I know that Alan and I will be talking later today. We will have a 15-minute call, and I will make sure that that call does not go anywhere near over 15 minutes, and if it doesn't have to be 15 minutes, it won't be that time. Interestingly, you talk about the framework of a talk. Something else that I am transitioning kind of almost back into, I'm still all about your visibility, but I'm also about presentations that sell. So that is something that we cover in the presentations that sell. So here's what I want to give you, Alan, and I hope that you'll find it helpful. Having a framework for your talks, because I know that you're an accomplished public speaker and you've spoken at lots of different places, but having a framework actually gives you freedom. One of the sad things that I see for so many people who don't even think that they're a talented presenter is that they go out and present a lot of times, but they don't have a framework. So many people will put together a framework, which is fine, and they'll roll it out and they'll go and put their talk or their speech or their presentation together. But then what happens is they don't remember how to sell their value. This has got nothing to do with money, but everything to do with people really understanding the value that you add, the why in which you're sharing. So, for example, at the top of this Monday motivation, I talked about Mondays getting a bad rap and how I saw it back in my financial services days. So that is one way in which you can sell your value, and you'll notice that I didn't sell that value right at the end. I did it at the start so that if you appreciated this, you would jump in, and if you didn't appreciate it, that was fine. You would go off and do something in your day. So thank you so much for watching. Alan, I hope it helps. Decide on a piece of time, pick it, stick to it, focus, and you will get your talk done because you've done it so many times before. Thank you so much for sharing and watching, and thank you for the thank yous. And Ivona loves the invoice yourself. So go back over in the Visibility Vibes tribe and continue the conversation about this. But Monday is for motivation. So if there's a little motivation that you want to share over in the group, please do share it. Write it, live it, video it, post it. Can't wait to see what you share. Thanks so much. And talking of sharing, do share this video on your timeline. You never know who else might need it. Lots of love to you. Bye for now.